hear enough from all kinds of TV channels and things like that. So yeah, so what is it that's about that lost connection that we're all kind of struggling with right now, right? We are connected through Zoom, we are connected through different mediums, but at the same time we're kind of feeling that lost connection, right? And so that's what we decided to Glenn and I decided to kind of name today's little chit chat. So lost connection. um, and what about times before coronavirus? Have we lost our connection in a way? Are we losing connection? Can you be in a group of people and not connecting? So all these questions is what we're gonna be talking today about. So every time we get together at Marketing Clinic, I always say, let's just be honest. Can we just create a judgment-free zone and say, listen, I am failing at something, and that's okay. Because I think that's exactly how growth happens, right? Are you with me? Um, if you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, you go, I'm looking sharp. I'm a great guy. I have no issues. I have no problems. Well, people around you, they don't have any hope of you changing. But if you wake up in the morning, you look at yourself and you go, I'm not good at something. Here's a long list of things, and today I'll be working on them. I think these are the kind of people that we call good people, right? So they are trying to change. They're trying to learn. They're trying to grow, and they're a little less pain in the neck for other people, if you've noticed that as well. So we live in a kind of hard times, and especially right now. And if you're not feeling it, if your business, if your job is there, is secure, I have lots of friends that have their jobs, well-paying jobs, all secured, and they talk about books and they talk about the lots of free time that they have at home right now. And I go, hold it. Are you aware of what's going on? Economy is struggling. There's unemployment is through the roof. We live through some pretty crazy times. And so if it's not you, if you don't feel that, just know that people around you are. And I can give you a list of people that need help as of right now. So we live through some pretty crazy times. On the top of that, we live during these times of, I call them Instagram times, right? We live during the times where everything has to be pretty. You have to travel overseas to Europe and pay $5,000 just to take a picture because you have something to prove to others. And that's taking a toll on us as well, especially if you're on a younger kind of, in the younger group of people. I mean, that's especially that whole peer pressure, that whole self-image goals and problems. They're hard to deal with. Your self-identity is kind of tied into it and things like that. So we'll talk a lot about that today as well. So let's talk about lost connection and hardships this morning. All right. So Glenn asked me to tell you a little bit about myself. He did a pretty good job of already mentioning a couple of things as far as, things that I was able to do up until now. And what he didn't tell you is that I was born in the Soviet Union. So I was 4 or 5 years old when it got broken into pieces. And just that in itself is just it's an interesting environment that a large group of people create. It's a culture. It's and those of you who know me, you hear me talking a little bit about it. It's this whole centralized approach. It's this whole, just let's keep it kind of there. Let's keep it it's a Soviet Union. It's a system that proved itself, not to work necessarily as effectively, as efficiently. So my parents were engineers. They were in the space program, which is kind of, I think, an interesting fact. So my dad was a big deal engineer. I think he was by no exaggeration, probably in the top 25 engineers, construction engineers. So military construction engineers in the country. And so my mom and him, they met while my dad was her boss. So my mom was a rebel. She didn't like the Soviet Union. She didn't like this whole system. She didn't like the fact that when you pull out certain classified materials, they later on would like interrogate you and ask you all kinds of questions and think that you're a Western spy. She said, I've had enough of that. So my grandpa was all my family were kind of in the military and in the space program for some reason. So for a period of time, my grandpa was a hotel director where all the cosmonauts stayed. So he knew the first guy who went to space, Yuri Gagarin. The Korolev and all the rest of the folks. So it was just kind of interesting to hear my grandpa speaking about. Oh yeah, I knew him personally. He stayed at his hotel, and it was a hotel on the site of the like a space command. Well, how would you say it in English? There's a Kazakhstan. There's a launch pad, and there's a control. What would you call it? Like a whole separate administrative facility where they would control the flights from. And so that's where he was working. When I was a kid, I was pretty shy, and during my coaching with Glenn, I told him this story, and he's kind of quite fascinated by it. You can't tell it right now. I'm not nearly as shy as I used to be, but I was extremely shy. So at the age of 7, I mean, I was like a wild kid. My social interaction was limited to my sister and I. That's about it. At the time, I was 7 years old, and I was so shy. My mom said, "Okay, it's time. You got to go and buy bread on your own." And so she gives me money, and all I hear is, I need to give that money to the person. And say, I need bread. I need to give that money to the person and say, I need bread. Money to the person, I need bread. So I come to the store, and I approach the lady, and she's standing there all friendly and everything. And I go, here's the money, I need the bread. And I turn around and I walk away. And so she chases me, and she says, hey, you totally forgot the bread. And I go, oh yeah. And I thought she was gonna, I don't know, interrogate me or something. So I was extremely shy kid when I was growing up. Then the Soviet Union went through a period of time, we call them 90s, right? So 1991, the big, huge country, the 1/6 of the surface of the Earth size country gets to be broken into pieces, right? And so economies of all these countries just go through some pretty crazy time. So my dad was given a choice to retire early, which you would say, you look at it and go, he was 48 years old or something like that. And because of all the work that he did, I think his years counted 2 as 1 or 3 as 1 or something. And so some people would say, oh, great, I'm going to play some golf, right? I have plenty of time. Well, so he was all of a sudden a man with no game. And those of you who either had a parent like this, or you may have gone through a period like this, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. A man with no game, it's a pretty dangerous mix. So he starts drinking. And he basically ends his life with drinking. Now, mind you, his dad ended the same way. So he's a 2nd generation alcoholic. So if I start drinking right now and I go really kind of into it, I'll be a 3rd generation alcoholic. So just to kind of give you perspective, Soviet Union and modern Russia are just known for drinking. I don't know what about it, and which by the way we'll talk. What's the reason and things like that. But there's just something there. So my mom had to get 2 jobs, raise a family, put me through a basketball school, be a mom, be a dad, be everything to me. And so at the age of 10, when they divorce, I all of a sudden, going from a shy kid, just kind of limited to a little home activities with my sister, all of a sudden I'm becoming a man, I'm becoming an adult, and I wasn't ready for it. And so it took, 10 years old, you still have to be into all kinds of dreams and all kinds of, I don't know, going to school and just doing your own thing. But I was explaining fairly quickly that I'm a man, this household depends on me. And so I have to study, I have to go to school, and I can't just waste my life there. And so somehow they kind of stuck with me. And so at the age of 13, I started asking questions. What's the sense of life, right? Isn't that what the age 13 is for? To ask these simple questions. I really start kind of digging really deep into what this life is all about and why is it in such a way. And I started discovering certain things. So that search takes me to a certain discoveries. Like, for example, and it would be some weird things. Like, for example, I wanted to optimize myself. I wanted to be effective at what I do. Mind you, again, age of 13, 14. So I discovered, I was reading this Eastern philosopher who said that a person who can control his appetite can do anything. And when I read that, just something like a light bulb came up. I go, that's what I need to do. So for a period of time, I think for a year and a half, I started doing some really crazy things, some crazy experiments with myself. But so I've got myself to the point where I really don't care about food. And I'll tell you this right now, like my wife is going to be like, this guy eats only because he has to. And that's true. Yeah. So which I don't know. Now I'm going through some sort of a stomach issue. So I don't even know. Don't. I'm not saying go do it. This is a pretty stupid idea, but there's just there's something there. So I started doing a lot of reading, a lot of education. I realized the importance of education very early. So my mom was the one to kind of push me towards it. Then I started discovering what I call these days life design protocols. I started discovering that life is built upon certain principles, design protocols. It was designed in a certain way. And life is full of these laws and principles that if you follow them, things are very predictable, right? If I take a pen and I let it go right now, I know the future event, even though it's a future, because that mechanics is built on a very predictable principle, right? So I believe that a lot of things in life are built the same way, like principle of giving. Which in the marketing clinic, by the way, we talk a lot about it. Principle of giving just simply says, if you want to receive something in this life, you have to give. And mind you, giving and expecting something in return, that's not giving. That's an investment. That's a transaction. That's banking. That's just not giving. So I started doing all kinds of searches and all kinds of weird things, and I realized how wisdom was important. And again, I'm 13 years old. So you can tell I was a really weird kid. So the one thing I wasn't able to figure out was my dad. So I knew how life operates in a way, right? On the kind of basic fundamental level, but I couldn't understand my dad. I couldn't understand why he left. I couldn't understand why he decided to go from a very prominent man in a very prominent country to to essentially nobody by choice. And I could not figure it out. So, so let's talk about that lost connection. We're gonna come back to my dad here in a second. So Bruce Alexander did this experiment he called rat park experiment. So he took a classical experiment where they put a rat in a box and they gave that rat two choices of water, two types of water. One is morphine water and one regular water. And it's a classical experiment that basically proves that morphine is highly addictive and that the rat being put in the box, given a choice between the two, almost all the time goes to the morphine water, realizes the impacts of it, eventually gets overdosed and dies. A very classical experiment has been conducted many, many times. And so as a conclusion, and it kind of tells us, it tells you a little bit about humanity and how we draw conclusions, how we're very premature thinkers. So it says, morphine is highly addictive, must be the same with people, and morphine is dangerous. And this is what creates addictions, right? But the thing is, Bruce Alexander did this experiment. He started the experiment in such a way that he put this rat in a box and he goes, here's the two types of water. And it starts going, it goes through a classical trend. The rat starts going to morphine water more often, and it's just about to start kind of getting hooked up and start realizing the impacts of morphine. He then takes this rat out of this box and he puts it in what he called a rat park. And in this rat park, there is, he called it a rat heaven. He created a little heaven for a rat. There's a little carousel. There's an obstacle course. There's a little rope that it can climb on. I mean, it's a most wonderful experience for a rat possible. Lots of space, lots of exciting things to do. And same thing, he gives this rat two types of water, morphine and regular one. And he noticed a drastic decline in consumption of morphine water by the same rat. That was supposed to be, by this time, was supposed to be highly addicted already to the substance. But there's been a drastic decline. It still goes to it, but there's been a drastic decline in consumption of that morphine water. He then puts other rats in this park. And all of a sudden, this rat gets to interact with other, has a social activity all of a sudden. And guess what? The consumption of morphine drops entirely. So he then thought, okay, this is some sort of a fluke. This is something that maybe it's just this specific rat. He and many other people conducted the same experiment many times afterwards with the same exact, very predictable result. When a rat has more things to do, exciting things happening in its life, and has a social component, it does not go for morphine, period, even though it's readily available in abundance right then and there. So hold on. So if the conclusion of this experiment was the fact that most of the consumption of morphine was due to isolation itself, and not necessarily highly addictive substance nature of the substance, right? Are we here all of a sudden at the brink of do we need to reanalyze everything we knew about addictive substances and addictions and things like that? So all of a sudden, when I learned that part, which hasn't been that long time ago, I started understanding my dad. He simply lost connection to others. Maybe in a way, his self-identity was tied to performance. He thought he was worth as much as he could produce. Maybe his position was also part of it. And I don't know. I just when Glenn said, "What do you want to talk about?" I said, "Let's talk about that. Let's be real and let's admit certain things to ourselves." Let's admit, for example, the fact that society tells us certain things. Society tells us that we're worth as much as we produce. Well, I don't think so. I think we're worth a lot more than that. I think society tells us that we are worth based on how we look, right? I don't think that's the case. Society tells us that certain cultural components tell us that that we're worth, in accordance to how smart, how well-to-do we are. Again, I don't think that's the case. So my search kind of ended up bringing me to this idea that everything is made out of something, right? So think about it in a kind of, cause and effect kind of perspective. So everything is made out of something. So you look at the table, and the table is made out of wood. Most essential component of a table is wood, right? Wood fibers. A car is made out of metal, plastics, some liquid, right? These are most essential components of the car. What is life made out of? What is that most essential component of life? When I realized that life is made out of relationships, a lot has changed in the way I've kind of perceived, in the way I saw life. And I truly believe in that. Life on the most essential level is made out of relationships. And relationships are made out of meaningful conversations, which we're having right now. So we are, connecting, we're developing relationships. So again, when people are on a deathbed, nobody talks about how big your business was or how much money I left to my kids, which is important. They all talk about people and people that they connected, and those are most close to them at that particular point in time. So, well, so if we're talking about hardships, if we're talking about lost connections, if we're talking about an idea that if we somehow lose connection with others, it has a pretty detrimental effect on our lives, right? I think it becomes pretty clear at this point. So what are the applications of what we're talking about? So why relationships are important? Why basic human connections are so important? Well, what's the applications? We already talked about addictions, right? So addictions could be eliminated because of the connection. In Portugal, they had which by the way, a lot of this information is taken from the book. It's called Lost Connection, and I'll find the author for the book. It's called Lost Connection. And he talks about this experiment that Portugal did. Portugal alcoholism was on the rise for quite a few years. He then realized that that a lot of these folks didn't have jobs. They had to steal. they had to go to jails. But the initial reason for this whole increase in criminal statistics was alcohol. And so the government of Portugal decided to do something very interesting. Instead of punishing these people, they try to reintegrate them into society. So you would get, instead of going to jail, you would get a job at a local tire store, and you'll be working. You'll be reintegrating into society in a way. And they've noticed a drastic decline in the crime and just overall well-being of population, which could be kind of supported by statistics and things like that. So addictions are big, right? So what are the impacts? What are the applications of this whole concept of lost connection? Addictions, right? We already talked about that. What about health? At some point, I don't know if you had a chance to fill out these questionnaires. I think it was United Healthcare. At some point, 1 year when I was working at Unum a few years ago, they did this a questionnaire to determine the price of your health insurance. And they ask you questions to do that. And they ask you questions, what's your BMI? What's your eating habits? Which I thought was kind of interesting. And then we get to a section of, I think it was 10 questions about your social life. And I go, interesting. Why would you determine the price of my insurance or the risk on me as an individual based on my social connections? And questions were, how many friends do you have? How often do you hang out? Do you feel comfortable approaching them with certain things? Do you go to them for an advice? Things like that. And I go, interesting. Health insurance is asking me about my friends. So I think we see the connection there, right? We see that well-being depends a lot on that connection. And so if insurance industry that has plenty of resources figured it out, it's just a matter of time for us to kind of get to the same idea. So relationships, what if that lost connection will help us build better relationships, more meaningful relationships? What if we are going to stop being self-seeking and self-centered, and we'll start looking for a connection? So what about business? Is there an application there? If I'm very self-seeking, how far am I going to get in my business? Short term could be, significant impact, but long term, we do business with people that we like and know and trust, right? I think that's what Glenn always says. That's where I get it from. So can we build a better businesses because we're not pursuing our own interest, and rather we're looking to connect with others? And if you think about it, being very me-oriented, it's this self-isolation that we sometimes create for ourselves, right? Who was it? Let's see. I forgot who said it, but there's a saying, I like it. It goes, don't be afraid of being alone. Be afraid of being with people who make you feel alone. And I always ask myself the question, do I make anybody in my life feel like they are alone? Am I doing this whole self-isolation for myself and for others, basically, in a way? If people rely on me for any sort of moral support, and I'm here all about me, and self-seeking, well, I'm in trouble and they are in trouble because we're disconnected. What about marketing? So we, at the marketing clinics, and what I do is I have a marketing company. And so this is where I we're kind of getting that's something that's very kind of near and dear to me and to some of you, because I know some of you have businesses. So we kind of talk about this idea of me marketing versus you marketing, right? Me marketing would be, look at me, we're awesome, our services, our awards, look at us, me. How interested are you to read, go to a website that has this type of message, or watch any sort of piece of content that would say, look at me. What if we instead said, there's this other concept, there's this you marketing. What is it that you're working on? We're solving a particular problem. We have a solution for you, and it's all about you. What if you are user-centric, consumer-centric? The experience of large organizations out there prove that this is the key to success. And the last thing what I want to mention is mental health, depression. Is there any sort of impact or application out there of this whole idea of a lost connection when it comes to depression. And we'll probably talk about, like, I'm not any sort of clinical counselor here or anything. So let's say non-clinical depression. Let's say a software-based depression, right? There's a hardware, your brain, there's a software, your mind. And so say you're into a slump, you're into this little of a dark spot in your life. What's one of the most effective ways to get yourself out of it? I was going to share this article with you. I pulled it up. I'll send it to you in chat. And the reason I wanted to share this, because I know these, again, we're going through some pretty crazy times. And if there's anybody here who feels any sort of way, and just know that this is okay. Like, it's fine. We're all going through some pretty crazy times right now. And so what is one of the most effective ways to get yourself out of that dark spot in your life? Well, according to the article that I've sent you, one of the most effective ways is to help others. If you are down, if you're depressed, you may have just simply forgot that there's a person right next to you who has a bigger problems, larger need than you do. And when you focus on that person's problem and needs, and you're there to make a difference in their lives, there's something magical that happens to that depression. And those of you who have gone through any sort of dark moments like this, you may attest to this. So in this article, what I like is, and I'm going to wrap up with this. In this article, it talks about, which I thought was kind of interesting, kind of went along with what we were talking about today. Psychology Today article says there are two types of goals. There's a self-image goal, or category of goals, and there's a compassionate goals, which I'll probably call this something else, but you kind of get an idea. Self-image goals would be, how do I live this Instagram life that is beautiful, wonderful, and yet may not necessarily be filled with all the meaningful things that, will truly make me happy. And compassionate goals are all about, how do I make a difference in the life of other person? And I want to encourage myself, and I want to encourage all of you guys to, let's set the right type of goals. Glenn talks a lot about goals that are, you have to be ambitious. It has to be high enough. You have to shoot for the stars. And these are all great things. We all have to be successful. But my question to you is, what type of compassionate goals do you set for yourself? Do you see one of your purposes in life to add value and impact other individuals around you in any sort of way possible? Because if you do, there's some sort of a harmony that's being created as a result in your personal life. So you're getting a lot out of this. That's about it. I think we jumped quite a bit from this to that, to my search, to my dad, to some sort of a depression subject. And some of you may go like, what in the world are we talking about? But I hope at least one of you have gotten a little something out of this. Don't lose connection. It's very important. When we lose connection, we become less of humans. We become less healthy. We develop addictions. We become depressed. And so during this time of coronavirus, like we're isolated. How do you not lose a connection during these times when we're all isolated? And so that's why I appreciate what Glenn does, connecting us all here. I think it's very important. And so hopefully you also, in whatever you do, be it you're building your own business, being any sort of having a side gig, maybe you're a start company like Marsha or Aram, maybe an existing business like Corey and Dan, but just know that connecting with others will get you a lot further than setting any sort of self-image goals out there. When we go out there, ask yourself a question like, what am I talking to people about? Am I talking about me and things that I'm interested in, or am I talking to others about them and making a difference in their life? So if you're into any sort of marketing, just remember that just stop talking about yourself. Stop selling. It doesn't work. We all hate to be sold, and yet we all like to buy. So don't self-isolate yourself. This life is a lot more meaningful and beautiful than we ever thought. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to leave it there. And I don't know what the format, Glenn, right now. Any sort of questions, or I don't know how we're doing on time right now.
Oh, we're doing great on time, Anton. You knocked it out of the ballpark as always. Marcia, did he not hit a home run and accomplish exactly what we were looking for as far as understanding what community really means to him?
Well, absolutely. In fact, my head's kind of spinning with all of the thoughts that of what he shared, and I was thinking about different situations in my life that I've seen and how what he was talking about relates to it. Anton, I'd like you to talk a little bit about Chattanooga and how coming here, what is it about America, about being here in Chattanooga and the experiences that you've had here, how has that changed you and affirmed or changed your ideas that you started off with when you were in the Soviet Union?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I think we all live in a beautiful country. Let me just start there. And if you don't realize that, you're just not seeing where, like, this is a really beautiful country. So just I don't know. I always wanted to come here. I've been here, a few times before. My goal was to come and get my MBA. And in Chattanooga, I never thought about coming to Chattanooga out of all places. My thing was Boston, New York, and so my wife has family there. For the longest time, we wanted to move there, but then Chattanooga is there's something about this community that's truly meaningful in Chattanooga. There's a big support system, which when I saw that, I kind of went for myself. I went, hold it, I'm going to be a part of it. I'll be part of that support system for others. And Marsha, with the marketing clinic, with what I do, my business, that's truly why I do it. And yeah, I try to be this way. Let's see. I don't know what else to add. There's a lot that's happening in Chattanooga. I mean, most of you are from Chattanooga, at least. You know exactly what I'm talking about, and so it's a great time to be in Chattanooga. There's a lot ahead of us. I don't know.
Well, another thing that occurred to me is that we are so isolated right now,
Mm-hmm.
and we all really have to make an effort to not be so isolated during this time. I personally find it difficult. The whole Zoom thing and all that, it's just, but that's all we've got right now. And a woman recently reached out to me and let me know that the reason she dropped out of our community was that she's very ill. And it really touched me that that she was reaching out in that way. And so right now, like, I'm trying to figure out how to connect with her without putting her in any more danger, because she's got a serious cancer that has been very aggressive. And so that means that she's vulnerable to this other, and the whole thing of the balance of trying to connect with her, but yet keep her safe. And, there's just a lot of complex questions right now that we've never had to really deal with before. And you have to think through things in a different way when you're trying to reach out to people. So I'd appreciate if some of the other group would just talk about some of the complex questions that they're facing that are brand new because of our isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, before we go on, if I could interrupt right quick, Anton, you've mentioned the Chattanooga Marketing Clinic, which you've got many fans of the clinic on. And so since it's virtual now, why don't you tell everyone about when the clinic is and how they can join?
Yeah, we meet on Wednesday nights, Wednesday at 6 p.m. We do it every week these days because we know it's needed. Yeah, so if you're into any sort of business, any sort of, and you want to grow, that's what we do out there. We just get in a circle and we talk. This week we're gonna have one of our members present, and she's gonna we talked about this idea of creating customer journey and how do you design. Anyway, I don't want to kind of dive too deep into this, but we talked about this concept for a long time. There's very beneficial if you do any sort of business, it'll just tie everything together. It's one of the most essential strategic exercise you can do for your business. And so she's going to be talking about how she did it in her organization. And so, yeah, just if you're into business, if you want to start anything, just join. That's what we do out there. We'll learn from each other.
And how do we find the clinic online?
Yes, just Google Chattanooga Marketing Clinic. It's all going to be there.
Good deal. Let's see. We've got some that I had difficulty getting in. We've got Sylvia Colvin with us. Sylvia, why don't you tell us right quick about yourself, and then maybe you might have a question you'd like to ask Anton or a comment you'd like to make.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late. I had some things interfere with getting on time, but I was very interested. Sorry I missed the first part of your talk. Glenn, did you record this by any chance?
I did. I was a little bit late in starting it, but yes, most of it is recorded. So
okay, I'll try to pick up what I missed. But I met Glenn through Toastmasters, and then it turns out that we both have adult daughters that are friends of each other, so went to high school together. So that was another connection. And then I've known several of the other members of this community through different ways in Chattanooga. So it's always interesting because the topics are so diverse, but they all seem to come back around to something we're familiar with. And your comment about the rat experiment, I just read an article which referred to that. I reread it yesterday, and I read it about a month and a half ago, written by a woman who has not alcohol, but a different kind of addiction, and just emphasizing the importance of community. And I think that is the key really to the success of the 12-step groups, because it is a community, it's a support community to help one another. And that is probably the real key to it is I have this problem, I can help you with it as well. And that community is underestimated a lot of times. It's not just head knowledge, it's not just spiritual knowledge, it's a community of support. Because when you feel yourself going down, like, oops, I'm getting off track, I'm getting way off track, you've got somebody to reach out to. So I really enjoyed your reference to that, and thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Is there anyone else that got on late that didn't have an opportunity to introduce themselves? Anyone? Oh, Maurice, are you still there? Maurice Lewis, are you still with us? Well, I saw he jumped on a little bit later. Well, I reckon we've lost him, but anyone else that didn't get to introduce themselves? Let me do this. I would feel bad if I didn't do it. I'm not playing favorites here, but Marcia and Rick are doing something very different. And we've got people on here that have never met Marcia and Rick before. So in 30 seconds, tell us about Aisha's doll.
Well, Aisha's Friends was started because it was based on the special idea of a special needs girl named Aisha. And when she was in the hospital having brain surgery, she realized that her disability was invisible. It was hidden under her hairline. But she realized that there was kids with very visible disabilities that did not have a doll that looked like them. And so that became her dream, to have a doll that could be altered, whatever disability that the child had. Well, on the other side, Rick, who's been my long-term friend, had developed a doll that's multi-articulated. Everybody knows the American Girl doll, 18-inch doll, and they only move at the shoulders and at the hips, but they sell thousands of accessories for these dolls that they only could stare at. And so he had developed this idea of a doll that moved more like a child. And the reason that we combined those two ideas was that at points of articulation, they could be altered for limb different children. Well, that was the basic idea and still is. But once we got out and started doing customer discovery in hospitals, we found out that there was this huge need for a doll that moves like a child for physical therapists, occupational therapists, child life specialists, and so many. And one of the things that's been really interesting, a development having to do with the COVID, is that our doll is the only one that can be disinfected. So it actually has even a greater value now in this new world that we're entering into than it did before. So we've been, focusing some of our attentions towards, all right, in this new environment, exactly where does our doll fit in? So that's what we're doing. And Rick has been working on our provisional patent, all the drawings and everything that, are part of that. And so we're moving forward with great enthusiasm, even though we're stuck temporarily here.
I'd like to say that I've led an interesting life. I grew up on a college campus. I was born and raised on one. And so I've met a lot of different people and had a lot of different personal associations with people from all walks of life. But I'd like to say what Anton has been saying, and particularly with this situation we have right now, that not only is your social interaction sort of curtailed, and if you can't, make it simplify, if you can't actually go and help somebody, one thing you do is at least communicate with them. And you say hello, how are you doing? And that creates a society too, so nobody feels alone. Long story, but I've had some dealings with some psychologists, and the way you tell a good psychologist from a bad one is if they hand you their card and tell you, make an appointment, that's probably not very good. The first thing, if a good one should say, is you're not alone. If whatever your problem is, you're not alone. And that's an important thing to remember, that that's what they start out with. And it's a great relief. And if you can just call anybody that just keep in touch so they don't feel alone. So that's the foundation for the whole thing, for a society that works.
Hey, real quick, I was going to say, with the situation that we're all in, keeping the connection is essential. So is anyone out there working and communicating via virtually outside this video, or making content, trying to find ways to help people? Also, have you learned a new skill? If you don't come out, I think, without learning some new skills out of this whole situation, you might have, didn't use your time as wisely as possible. So anyone want to interject to what I just said?
Yeah,
I think excuse me, go right ahead. Who was that?
I was just saying, yeah, I totally agree with that. I've said before, and I don't mean this meanly, but I'm sort of the rabbit thrown in the briar patch here. I'm really enjoying having the time to concentrate on some things that I haven't been able to work on otherwise. But it's it's important to remember everybody else, and it's everybody has a different situation, a different way they deal with things. We just heard about a person that committed suicide because they couldn't raise the money for their family, and that's how bad it gets to some other people. And you want to know that doesn't help anything, but that's a real edge to come to. And
there's a lot of people that are feeling desperate right now, and I think those of us who have better coping mechanisms need to be really sensitive to that. And as we were sitting here talking about, I think about this young man who has disappeared from time to time, and I won't mention his name, but I know he has dealt with depression, and I'll reach out to him today, because I know that he could be feeling very alone right now.
Yeah, I would like to also add, kind of to Corey's question about, working on the self right now, because I think relationships are incredibly important, but it really does start with the self. And this is a really unique opportunity. We lived very, very remotely for years and years. And so this is kind of normal for us in a weird way, believe it or not. We were always it's just been the two of us for a very long time. And it's a very unique opportunity to be very introspective and to, find out what are the things that are important to me, what are the things that I need to work on, and how can I better serve other people? What can I really bring to the table? And I think that is a really unique way to, try to sharpen a skill, but also just reflect on yourself, so that you can come out of this, with something else to bring to your relationships.
I've spent a lot of time not just working on business skills, but like my whole family, my children, my husband, we're all doing Duolingo and learning different languages. And with each of my children, I have watched we subscribe to Masterclass, and I've been doing different master classes with my children. And with one of them, we made croissants, which is of course very labor intensive, and they turned out to be really terrible croissants, but delicious. And so it's been a wonderful opportunity to develop my family relationships while also learning new skills and things that we can continue to do together when all this passes.
You made a good point there, and Corey was alluding to it. And for those of you that were part of the Toastmasters spring meeting last Saturday, I had referenced something that Einstein said: in the middle of every crisis lies an opportunity. And you notice the key to that is in the middle, not at the end. If you don't find it now, you're going to miss the opportunity. So, what are you doing to improve yourself? What new business are you looking at starting? Which a basic of selling is finding a need and filling it. Finding a need and filling it. And by the way, I think that if we took everything that Anton was saying and summed it up, I'd categorize it as intentional living. Anton is a true example of what I think a leader is. And not in addition to knowing the way, going the way, and showing the way, Anton understands that, again, something I referenced last Saturday, people don't do what you say, people do what people see. So Anton is a glowing example of a person that does what he says. He talks the talk, but he walks the walk. He talks the talk, but he also, more importantly, walks the walk. And that's where the real test, I think, of leadership is, especially in times like this. Coach Dan, our co-organizer that we've heard very little out of during the coronavirus, I know you're just overflowing with words of wisdom you'd like to share.
I don't know if I can top Anton's content here. It's good stuff. I've heard a lot of great things from everyone here, from intentional living to give without expectation. That's one thing that's truly changed my life and my business over the years, is just give relentlessly, figure out how you can help other people. And one thing I learned a couple of years ago was out in California. I was in LA, and one woman I had met, the last thing she ended our conversation with was, "What's one thing I can do for you today? What's one specific thing I can do for you today?" So that goes along with being intentional. I mean, reach out. What can you do? I mean, this group is just, it's a beacon of light, because I know a lot of us, we can look around now and we see people and they're getting up late. They're sleeping in, they're not doing anything. They're not taking advantage of all the opportunity that's out there. And maybe they don't know. But with all the resources we have, with Google, with people like us out there, I mean, the consensus is right. We need to lead these people. We need to breathe life into them You know, because there's a lot of people out there that they don't know where they're going now. They have no clue. They can't see the opportunities like we do. They don't necessarily have the outlooks like we do. So now is a better time than ever just to get out there and give. And, you know, working on self is absolutely important. I think that comes first. That was already mentioned. But the ability to get out there and help somebody else too, and that connection, everything that Anton presented on was just, I feel it's dead on, and it's been proven time and time again. If you look throughout life and throughout our journeys, I think it's 100% accurate.
You know, another message there, that underlying message is that, and I referenced this Saturday, one of the toughest lessons or people that you will have to lead is yourself. You can't lead others until you can lead yourself effectively. And we've got a group of people here that are all leaders. You lead others because you've learned how to lead yourselves. And I want to thank each and every one of you, because each and every one of you have had an impact on my life one way or another, and you might not even know it. I see we've got some other people that have jumped on, didn't get a chance to introduce themselves. Mark Stockman, want to briefly introduce yourself, and maybe you have a comment about today?
Yeah, sure. Mark Stockman here with Allen and Hoschel, Architects and Engineers. Not really comment, really more listening in and absorbing at this point. Still trying to hear the entire format one time through of how these things work. So that's where I'll leave it.
All right, thank you. And let's see, I noticed Tom Monroe, you didn't, did you really get a chance? I don't think you got a chance to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm a copywriter here in town. So this is a good meeting. I really enjoy it.
Any comment about the content?
Anton knows his stuff. He's an amazing natural educator. That's one of the first, when I met him at a networking thing about a little over a year ago. I've been to a couple of the marketing clinics and just walked up to him and said, "You're one of the most amazing natural educators I've ever met." It just, it just kind of rolls off your tongue.
Well, I really appreciate it. Tom is the best copywriter in Chattanooga. Just so you know. So.
And I'd have a picture, but I can't get my camera to work, so I don't know what.
Well, join the club, Tom. I could get mine to work, but the only way when it does this, I have to reboot, and I was scared. I didn't want to cause us to lose everyone. Let's see. Mirdad, I may have butchered your name, but you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe you might have a comment about today's program.
Good morning. My name is Mirdad Soravi, and I'm transitioning from Knoxville to Chattanooga, and my profession involves technology, specifically operating from data centers that has not really been affected. Our operations have not been affected by the coronavirus crisis. And as you said, we are taking our time during this crisis and organizing to service customers better. My main intention this morning is to know my new friend Anton a bit more, and glad to be here, part of this meeting. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Molly Clark, you just look like you got something that you'd like to share with us.
I do. I want to say thank you, Anton, for sharing. I think that I super appreciate your authenticity, and that you just bring to us you and your experience and what you've learned. And I want you to know it means a lot to me. It's a encouragement to really reach out to some people I've been thinking of reaching out to, and you've inspired me today. And I think that's wonderful. In answer to your question, Corey, I've been doing a lot of like meditation with my time, a lot of yoga with my time, really coming inside. And then now I'm even more inspired to kind of reach out to people I've been thinking about. So this is really a perfect call for a culmination. I think both are super important. I've also been really aware of breathing because I'm doing breathing exercises that are very specific for stimulating different parts of the body and for connecting different places that need to be connected. And so I encourage you to become aware of your breathing, and slow, deep breathing in and out 4 seconds can do miraculous things. And I'm seeing that every day.
Hey, Anton, I really appreciate everything you said. I just wanted to ask a question. It's a sounding board question. I've been teaching 5-year-olds for the past month virtually karate, and I'm starting to fail. And so I don't know what I could do. I'm going to put a panda head on my head. That's my next option, or make a cartoony video and send it to them and say practice. I mean, anyone got any ideas?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say from a marketing standpoint and communication standpoint, I think video is a very effective piece of content. So yeah, I think
I mean, they're failing. They're not. The kids are like falling on the couch. They're starting to punch the TV. Kids are going crazy. Okay, that's my point.
Well,
it's a little humor here, okay? But I'm trying to make sure you guys understand this is the reality I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, if they're staying engaged, that's not too bad, even if they're not doing it as well as you'd like.
Does everyone have kids here?
Yes.
Mine are grown.
I don't have any kids, so that's why I'm asking you guys here. Come on, help me out, please.
I think at this point you should manage your expectations about what they are willing to do.
I homeschooled my kids, one of which had ADHD. And my suggestion to that would be see if you can network with the parents to give these kids some cardiovascular every day. Like a mile or 2 brisk walk for them. You know, I mean, their legs are going twice as fast as the parents. But the idea is a brisk, long walk for them, 1 or 2 miles a day.
Right.
And that focuses the mind and calms that energy that you're seeing of flipping out on the couch and punching the screen. You know, they're able to control themselves a little better.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone.
You know,
I would say, oh, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead, Becky.
Corey, I would say, as the mother of 3, one of which is 5 years old, that making your instruction less time restrictive, meaning they can use it and view it whenever they need to, because the parents see their ups and downs throughout the day and can plug it in when they would actually get something out of it versus at the predetermined time.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Also, for those of you that don't know Corey, he really is internationally known, and for his work in karate, he's the only authentic karate instructor in the greater Chattanooga area, and probably one of the things he's known best for all over the world is for his work with autistic children. Corey, just 20 seconds. Tell us a little about the work with autistic children.
Okay, I taught the first person with autism to ever go to the nationals, the first girl as well, and I have the first athlete on the U.S. karate team with autism for the past 4 years. Taught the first blind woman as well, and I have a kid in the wheelchair that's won 19 straight gold medals. But anyways, I work with anyone with special needs, anyone that's willing to learn.
Thank you. Anyone else in the group that has done something really unique that you would like to share? Anyone? You know, I thought of something a while ago as far as there was several times we've talked about helping people and taking the me out of it and thinking of we. And, you know, even with what Anton has shared today, most of us have heard it in one form or another. And that's the beautiful thing about self-improvement, personal development. There's really nothing new. There's just a new way of hearing it, possibly. And the way someone else says something that had been said years ago, maybe by King Solomon, or you might would have found in the book of Proverbs, but the way it's worded and related to their life and based on where you are in your life journey, it suddenly connects. But I thought of my old buddy Zig Ziglar. You help enough other people get what they want, and you'll get what you want. That's really taking the me out of it, and it's all about helping other people. If you'll concentrate on others, you'll be taken care of if you use common sense.
I was going to also say that I 100% agree with you, Glenn. And I also think that that life is built on these very simple set of principles. And if we get them right, it's almost like everything else is just going to follow. Yeah, it's just a matter of kind of finding them. Yeah, like we talked a little bit about like some of them, and today this whole principle of giving, this whole principle of like other people orientedness, or being oriented towards others, and some other things. It's like it does change relationship, and it does change just the way we do business, the way we interact with others. We're not knowing the community for, oh, that's the guy who's going to be asking, or oh my goodness, that's the, like this person is known for a specific thing, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but in a way, like you attract, other people. They have like similar energy, and you know how they say, be the energy you want to attract, right? I think there's something there, and Glenn always talks about the law of attraction. So I think that's another very fundamental principle that this life is operates. And we can agree, we can disagree, but it's just like gravity. It's hard to say that it's not there. It's just, we see similar people bundling, into or being grouped in a, by certain interests, by certain nationalities, sometimes by certain, sets of characteristics, but it's a law of attraction. And the question is, who am I? Who am I attracting? What kind of people am I attracting around me? So yeah. And also speaking, just another, like just 2 cents basically. Another thing about lost connection and people that are truly disconnected are the people that we don't see, right? We know they're somewhere out there. They're very kind of shy. They're very kind of hidden, and they do their own thing, and they're home a lot. We know they're disconnected. That's 100% true. But I also want to point out, like, for example, leaders are highly disconnected people on average, I would say. And we don't think about it sometimes. We think, well, that guy's a president. Well, that guy's a manager. That guy's my boss. That guy is, look at him. He's on the TV all the time. But we just don't know how much of a disconnect there is. And so if you, I encourage, like, I guess myself and all of us to, just let's go and say hi to somebody. And sometimes it's a person who's hidden, who's underground, who's just doing their own thing out there. But sometimes it's very prominent, very visible figures. We think they get all the attention, they get all the love, but they're actually one of the most disconnected individuals out there. So.
Anton, one thing, I agree with you, but to a little bit, I disagree with you on one comment you made about leaders and being disconnected. It depends on what kind of leader it is. Mm-hmm. The most effective leaders are those that are relational. And, there's a book, The 5 Levels of Leadership, and the biggest hurdle in getting from the first level, the positional level, which is you're at that level based on your title. You're finally become a supervisor or something of that nature. People don't follow you because they want to. They follow you because they have to at work. Otherwise, they're not going to get paid. You're going to fire them. But those leaders that are able to cross over and become relational are the ones that excel. And they're not, it doesn't have to be, there used to be a saying, and I used to say it, it's lonely at the top. And I can remember in a business that I ran for 25, almost 26 years, I used to get lonely. But the reason was I was putting myself up there, and I wasn't bringing enough people along with me. I had those that I developed, but it was toward the end before I really understood the importance of being a relational leader. Hey, over there in Mount Juliet, Bob Ritchie, we hadn't heard anything out of you, and I can't imagine a Toastmaster not talking.
Mhm.
Did you go to sleep?
No, I haven't gone to sleep. Just taking it all in.
Well, what's your biggest takeaway?
First time in the group, and just trying to absorb all the knowledge that's there.
Well, this is not a hard group to understand. We just do what we feel like doing as long as we don't bring harm to others. So you have a question of Anton or a comment you'd like to make?
Well, I was curious, and I put one in the chat thing from a standpoint of, relating the two societies, the society that he came from out of the Ukraine and Soviet Union to what's going on in the U.S. today. Does he see any parallels, and how can we effectively keep, basically our society and everything running without running it into the ground, maybe?
Okay, we got 1 minute. Anton, could you answer his question in about 45 seconds?
I think it's a great question. Probably won't be able to answer it in 1 minute, but I do see it, honestly. I do see a great nation shifting towards a certain direction. And I'm not a pessimist. I think this is a great country, and I think it has all the future ahead of it. And I just think there's some sort of resilience of American mentality where we're just gonna rise from the ashes again. We've done it many times, and we're just gonna do it again. And so but I think Bob, I think you're asking this question, and you mean something. You probably noticed some sort of changes, and I don't know how, like, where you guys all stand on the political spectrum and things like that. But yes, I would say, yeah, it's probably that's probably as much as I can answer right now. But this is,
all right, now time's up. I had a question. Everyone unmute for a minute. I need some voices. Could we unmute? Everybody unmute. I just had a thought. We've only done this maybe one other time, and there was a gap in between. But this has been good. There's been a lot of golden nuggets that Anton has dropped here today, and we really haven't scratched the surface, and it's part of my fault. I kept wanting to include everyone, and those that got in late, I wanted to give them a chance to talk a little bit about themselves. But what if we continued this subject for our next meeting, which will be in 2 weeks from now? You're unmuted for a reason. Here's some ayes or nays or whatever.
I think that sounds great.
Anton, can you be back with us?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's just one way to get a member to come on a regular basis. Oh, we may do it 3 weeks, three meetings in a row. Well, folks, this has been fun. For those of you that are with us for the first time today, I hope we helped you to feel at home. And I think that you'll find everyone that's a member of this group, I think that in one way or another, we all connect with people. And Anton, our speaker today, is just a shining example of a quote that I claim: authenticity is the great connector. Would you not say that he's a great connector? So
absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you to each and every one of you. If you have suggestions, please let me know. And what I'll do is I'll try to get this thing posted where if you want to go back and listen to part of it. Unfortunately, I started the recording just a little bit late, but remember, folks, it'll be 2 weeks from today. And what date would that be if anybody's got a calendar handy? That'll be, put us into May for sure.
12th.
May 12th, 8 o'clock, same time. So invite friends if you would like. And if anyone, if you found value or have any comment you'd like to make, please feel free to text me. 423-667-2685, 423-667-2685, or Glenn, Glynn at glennhodges.com. I'd love to hear from you, and be intentional for the next 2 weeks. And remember, folks, your day will be just as good as you visualize it. I love each and every one of you. Have a great, safe week, and we'll see you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
You, Anton.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Have
you.
Said to say bye.
Ciao.
Bye.